This is Jake from Dogstar Fiber Arts, and this is just a quick video to answer some questions about the custom seam rippers and crochet hooks that I've been adding in the shop. So all the seam rippers and crochet hooks that I list are all handmade by me on a lathe. If you're not familiar with lathe work, it's basically an electric motor strapped to a frame that spins a piece of material around so that you can cut and shape it. The lathe that I use is a Delta 46460 that I've had for about 10 years. And I can safely turn material that's about 12 inches across and up to 18 inches long at anywhere from 250 RPM up to about 4,000 RPM. And that's about as deep as I'm going to get into actual dorky hardware stuff. But if you have specific questions or enjoy talking about dorky hardware stuff, then just shoot me a message or drop a comment below. Now, when we're talking about hooks or rippers or even pens and pencils, etc., it all starts with a blank. And a blank is just a chunk of material that you're going to shape. It can be wood, acrylic, antler or horn, bone, whatever you want. For this example, I'm using an acrylic blank called Copper Crush. And word of warning, if you stumbled onto this video because you were looking to start using a lathe, don't start with acrylic. It can be really hard to cut and it beats the crap out of your tools. Also, if your tools aren't crazy sharp, it can blow out on you. And catching a sharp chunk of exploding plastic with your face flung up at a couple thousand RPM is an experience that is best avoided. Start with a chunk of oak or maple. Also, wear a face shield. Anyway, Copper Crush. So what I do is I take the blank and I mark off a section to cut down based on the pattern that I'm seeing in the blank. And this is just a quick and dirty cut based on the length of the brass tube that I'm going to use. The tube helps give the thing strength, but also holds the retainer spring and the end cap much better than the plastic would. More on that later. Once I've got it cut, I drill out a hole to fit the brass tube in. Sometimes I use a drill press, sometimes I use a drill attachment on my lathe, which is what I'm doing for this one, and sometimes if it's a really oddball shape, I may just drill it by hand. The trick is to drill it straight. So once you've got the hole, you scuff up the brass really well, glue it, and seat it in the tube. I like to give myself a lot of extra clearance on both sides. That way, if the blank gets a little funny and chips out, it's not ruined. It wastes a small amount of material, but after 10 years of doing this kind of thing, I have a whole box full of small end pieces, and I haven't figured out a great use for them yet, so I'm okay losing an extra half inch here or there in the name of a better finished product. After that, I true up the end with an end mill, and that ensures that even if I didn't drill it straight, which I did, the end is square to the tube. It also cuts back all that extra that I left on there. Once that's done, I stack up some bushings that seat into the brass tube and allow it to ride tight on the mandrel, which is just a fancy word for a metal rod that keeps everything straightened together. Now we're ready to start the actual cutting. Because most blanks are just square cut, you first have to knock all the sides off to make it completely round. This is really the worst part, because as it spins, those four edges are coming around at a high speed and smacking your blade. Really, it's kind of this dance where you vary the speed and the angle of your blade in order to work with the grain of the material. When you hit it correctly, it can actually be a little bit zen-like with these long continuous ribbons of material spiraling off your blade edge. Once it's totally rounded, now you can take a look at the material. You can see the pattern and you can decide what kind of profile you want to cut. Here's the thing. Sometimes you decide how you want to cut out a material, and sometimes the material decides for you, and it's in your best interest to let it happen that way. Personally, I like straight edges with a thicker profile that's easier to grip, and based on the feedback I've been getting, y'all do too. So I skipped ahead past all the actual cutting part, and this is what I ended up with. Now that the shaping is complete, the next step is to sand all the cut marks out and polish it up. Now when I started, some store clerk handed me a polishing compound that I was told everyone uses. The instructions are to sand with 400 to 600 grit sandpaper and then use a polishing cream. Now, if you don't know anything at all about sandpaper grit, you're not alone. Most people don't. To put it into some perspective, a typical nail file is between 100 grit and 240 grit, and that's about where I start. Then I quickly get to about 1500. Now, the finest grade of sandpaper that you can buy is 10,000 grit. I go past that. I finish with a micro mesh pad that's rated to about 12,000. So basically, if I were to then use that polishing paste, it actually dulls my finish. But what I get is a very clean surface that allows the beauty of the material to shine through. I mean, what's the sense of working through all these challenges associated with cutting plastic if you're not actually going to let the plastic shine? So generally, it's really hard to capture all that depth of a finish in a photo, but I absolutely love getting feedback like, wow, this looked really great online, but it's so much better in person. And that's how I know I nailed the finish. After that, it's really just a matter of deciding whether or not to add a clip, choosing the hardware finish color, pressing in the end, and then seating a retainer spring. Once you do, here's the finished product. Now, with the supplier I use, small blades, large blades, stiletto points, and even crochet hooks are all the same diameter, so they're all basically interchangeable. So if you want to customize a handle to do multiple tasks, it's pretty easy. Send me a note and I can generally hook you up. I try and keep a bunch of extra blades and points in the bin. Total, start to finish, it averages for me about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on what material I'm using, not counting the time it takes for the glue to cure. Generally, wood is going to be less time, acrylic is going to be more. And really, that's it. Now I have a finished piece that I'm going to put into the shop. And hopefully that answered some of the questions that I got, which I love getting, by the way, and you can always ask me anything at all. And if there's something I didn't cover, or if you have additional questions, just shoot me a note. The best way is either on Instagram or on Etsy, both of which I'll link below in the video notes, or just drop a comment below. And as always, hey, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.